Now is Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. I appreciate you being with us here in the freezing cold. First of all, just the latest developments of, it seems, the reassignment of Mr. Bavino and the bringing in of Tom Homan. What do you make of that?
Well, it sounds like they need to change tempo in their eyes. But I can tell you that Minnesotans have had quite enough of Mr. Bavino. Glad to see him go. And the fact is that this city is outraged, is upset, 50,000 plus marched in this freezing cold weather, 9 below, just a few days ago. The day before Mr. Petty was shot down and killed, we marched 50,000 strong in the cold. So people are really, really upset. And I think Bavino leaving can only be a good development, and we'll hope for the best. But we're going to continue to press the claim of our state, and no matter who's there.
Trump now touting a meeting between Mayor Fry and Homan, his border czar. And Homan is now taking the lead in Minnesota. Trump's controversial top Border Patrol official, Gregory Bovino, is expected to leave Minneapolis within the next 24 hours. And he's taking some of his 2,000 masked and armed border agents with him. CNN is learning administration officials are frustrated with Bovino, who you may remember went before cameras when Alex Preddy was shot. Just within 4 hours of that shooting, in fact, he said this.
This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement.
It was clear that that was not true, according to the video, which contradicts what Bovino claimed. And Bovino's claims caused massive problems for this administration. Preddy, of course, is a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry, according to Minnesota police, and he wasn't threatening them with it at the time. He was carrying his cell phone, according to the video. And Bovino is not the only one whose standing with Trump is quickly deteriorating because of his handling of this thus far. The White House distancing itself today from Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary's claims that Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism.
Secretary Noem said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way.
And that comes as Republicans are now openly questioning the administration's aggressive tactics and demanding answers.
We certainly should not be labeling him as being a domestic terrorist who is going to execute cops. There's no evidence to support that.
What I think the administration could do better is the tone with which they're describing this. That immediately when an incident like this happens, they come out guns blazing, that we took out a violent terrorist. Hooray.
And so what's the goal right now? Is it to deport every single non-U.S. citizen? I don't think that's what Americans want.
I mean, it's pretty stunning when you hear that, right? It's loud and clear. And we've now got new video, as I said, coming into out front of the incident in Minneapolis that shows the moments leading up to the shooting. And I'm going to speak to the two witnesses who filmed this encounter with these videos. But first, let's go to Sarah Seidner. She is out front live in Minneapolis. And Sarah, you were there when Alex Preddy was killed. You were there when Minneapolis erupted afterwards. And now, obviously, Bovino leaving, real repercussions from him are very significant. But what are protesters telling you?
They are significant from a 35,000-foot view, but on the ground, it's too little too late. They have already killed 2 American citizens and shot another person in less than a month. And people here are like, look, we have asked again and again for ICE to leave this community. Not just the protesters, not just the resident, not just some of the business owners here, but the governor and the mayor. And so for those who are here, those who are mourning Alex Preddy, the 37-year-old ICU nurse who worked at the Veterans Hospital, for them, it is almost a slap in the face. They want ICE and federal agents out of here. All of them, not some of them, not a few of them, all of them.
Sources now tell CNN that Border Patrol Commander Bovino and some of his agents are expected to leave Minneapolis tomorrow. Now, this shift in tone from the White House follows 2 days of top Trump administration officials making what can only be called blatant misrepresentations about Saturday's killing of Alex Preddy, a 37-year-old VA ICU nurse from Minneapolis. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said without evidence that Preddy brandished a gun and committed an act of domestic terrorism. Trump senior advisor Stephen Miller called him an assassin. Bovino said Preddy assaulted law enforcement. False, 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 false. Those statements all at best inconsistent with what we can all see on the videos of the shooting, and at worst, egregious lies. Either way, these officials are being called out as such, even by opinion journalists who are normally quite supportive of the administration. The Wall Street Journal and the Free Press editorial boards, even the New York Post editorial board, wrote today, quote, "Mr. President, the American people didn't vote for these scenes, and you can't continue to order them to not believe their lying eyes," unquote. Even Leavitt wouldn't stand by the Nome and Miller lies today.
Secretary Nome said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts in the investigation lead itself.
Was he alarmed to hear his top officials referring to him in that way, rushing to that judgment?
Danny, go ahead.
Let's start with CNN's Anderson Cooper, who's in Minneapolis. Anderson, tell us what you're seeing and hearing there today, now that it appears as though the president is sidelining Bavino and sending in border czar Tom Homan.
Yeah, look, I certainly think there's a lot of people who have been out in the streets, a lot of people who have been out at the memorial for Alex Preddy, as we have seen over the last couple of days, who will certainly be relieved to hear about the reassignment or the demotion or whatever one wants to characterize it as of Greg Bavino. There certainly has not been much confidence in his ability to tell the truth or his ability to control any of the agents or many of the agents under his alleged leadership. And I think, so you hear people I've talked to are pleased by that news, unclear exactly what it means to have Tom Homan coming in. Obviously, there's some people who are going to read that as a good development. Anything that brings some sort of order and sense of decent policing by some of these agents from Border Patrol or ICE. I mean, we've all seen the images of what happened to Alex Preddy, the tactics that the local police here, the city police, have been decrying by many of these Border Patrol agents, by these masked ICE agents who seem to answer to no one. And as you know, the federal government is now in charge. The Border Patrol, ICE, is in charge of investigating what happened, whether they're investigating their own officers or are investigating Alex Preddy as a domestic terrorist, as the Secretary of Homeland Security labeled him, as you've been reporting, and Gregory Bavino as well, and Stephen Miller. That is unclear. So there's a lot of skepticism. There's a lot of fear and anger here. But certainly it does feel like something is changing, and how that actually reflects on the ground in terms of actual operations. Will people still be ripped out of their cars, have their seatbelts cut, be pushed on the ground, be maced, with chemical agents is unclear. So a lot remains to be seen. But it certainly has been a day of breaking developments and some sort of sense that there is some sort of.
There's mounting outrage, criticism, and rebukes of how federal agents are operating in Minnesota.
The problem is not that enforcement is happening. It's clearly the manner in which these things are happening. These tactics are very obviously not safe.
The practices that these ICE and CBP agents are engaged in are not proper police tactics.
This is not policing, and it's not military service. It's something dangerously undefined.
This is the third shooting now in less than 3 weeks. The Minneapolis Police Department went the entire year last year recovering about 900 guns from the street, arresting hundreds and hundreds of violent offenders, and we didn't shoot anyone.
We didn't shoot anyone. The Minneapolis police chief there noting that you can patrol apples to apples the exact same region that these DHS agents have been flooding. You can collect guns, you can do a lot of work, and you can do it without shooting a nurse to death. This is about policy, as our top guest noted tonight, an FBI veteran. It's about outcomes. And critics say images like this, the gas mask, the guns drawn, the militarized body armor, is exactly the wrong approach if you are honestly trying to pursue safety. The masks, the fatigues, the menacing attitude, a clear lack of crowd control training in dealing with protests, and maybe, some critics say that's the point. They are not trained to deal with de-escalation and peace because from the top there is an effort to escalate, to talk about the Insurrection Act or martial law. The president talks openly about suspending elections and abusing power, so this is what the shock troops look like, say critics. Border Patrol agents accustomed to confronting cartels or illegal border crossing rather than protesters in urban areas is part of the obvious problem, the Post reports. DHS says it will handle any review of the killing of this American. That is a problem given that many Trump officials have already announced what they think the conclusion of that should be. After the shooting, local officials were also blocked from even going on the scene by federal agents, and they had a judicial warrant. We've talked about federalism and constitutional crises. This report is of your federal government defying the court-ordered requirements of your local government having access to a place where your local neighbor was shot to death by the feds. Not a good sign if this is allowed to continue, to say nothing of the tragedy of the loss of life. DOJ also fighting a judge's order to block federal agents about tampering with or destroying evidence. The border agents who killed Freddie have been moved out. So the question tonight is whether there is a cover-up of the killing. Will this investigation be credible? And if not, what does it say that a year into Donald Trump's term, as his actual support and credibility drops, he can now, to use the phrase, potentially get away with murder or get away with killing people without a murder investigation? The videos of the shooting make it clear what happened, who escalated, that the officials were the ones with their guns drawn, then shot him to death, including a shot in the back, while he was, as the New York Times and others have accounted, restrained. Here is some of the pushback.
It was said that Mr. Peretti was brandishing a weapon. Well, he was not brandishing a weapon. Yes, he did have a weapon. It was said that by the White House that Mr. Peretti attacked those agents. No, he did not.
I think the administration wants to get back control of the narrative, and they need to. We have Bill Maloogian reporting that there are some folks in DHS that are a little bit unhappy with the messaging, and understandably so.
It is politically disastrous for the president and also not the kind of civil society we need to live in.
We certainly should not be labeling him as being a domestic terrorist who is going to execute cops. There's no evidence to support that.
No, there's not. And this is not about a narrative. This is not about messaging. And it's not about politics, although political pressure may yet save a future American from this kind of killing. This is, against all odds, still about facts. It is the facts on these videos that have caused so much blowback. It is the facts that the law and justice must care about. It is facts that are ultimately adjudicated when it is allowed in court. And apparently, the independent pursuit of those facts, journalistically, in court, or in any other way, a local Minnesota investigation, that scares the Trump administration. Scares them that the facts could come out and would force them to be held accountable for the facts. What are the facts? Well, we're still gathering them. But contrary to some of what the Trump administration has said and lied about, which I'm not going to repeat on this news program, the New York Times account of this shooting notes that about 8 seconds after the victim was pinned, so 8 seconds go by since the pinning, and then, quote, agents yell that he has a gun. Now, legally, that matters because, as the Times notes, that indicates they may not have known he was armed until he was on the ground and had been pinned, meaning no longer any kind of threat. The agents appear to have him under their control, with his arms pinned near his head, the Times reports, after a detailed review and reporting of multiple video angles, as well as their reporters on the scene. And the Times notes, when things turn deadly, quote, as the gun emerges from the melee, another agent aims his own firearm at Preddy's back and appears to fire one shot at close range. At least 10 shots appear to have been fired within 5 seconds. Those are some of the facts that were gathered. I'm joined by Mark Claxton, retired NYPD detective and director of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance, who's worked at the intersection of these issues, public safety and policing, which he's given his life career to, and civil rights and accountability for proper policing. Given that New York Times account and the administration's claims that this was a terrorist clearly set out on murdering law enforcement, what do you see in the actual evidence?
What I see is really a bastardization of professional law enforcement. I see really a wasted opportunity. I know Mr. Weissman spoke about the importance of gathering evidence and conducting an investigation. And what we're seeing in real time is really the corruption of any criminal investigation, that any investigation of substance, the displacement of potential evidence, the loss of possible identification evidence. There's so much going on here, but that's because the mission itself is unwieldy and unclear and dysfunctional. and the individuals who have been set out to the mission are not properly trained, they're not properly prepared, they're not disciplined, and then you have multiple agencies involved in operations on the street involving the civilian population. So you can see their interactions are really clumsy, awkward, and when you have that along with law enforcement conducting operations, it really is a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, unless there is a significant pullback or rollback of these type of operations and the enforcement on the street level by this combo team of ICE, DHS Border Patrol, we really could have more fatalities and they're really avoidable.
The history of this moment, this time, is studied. An epicenter of this moment will undoubtedly be the city and the people of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The people there were pushed to the brink over the weekend, again, in the wake of another killing of a nonviolent bystander by ICE agents in Minneapolis. This time it was 37-year-old Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse who cared for veterans. Donald Trump and his cabinet, his administration, are demanding once again that you not believe your eyes and ears. Fortunately, for the sake of our country and our democracy, Americans in large numbers today are choosing to reject Donald Trump's lies and his administration's lies and reject a smear campaign by Donald Trump and his administration that is intended to somehow justify the unjustifiable, a state-sanctioned act of brutality on the streets of an American city. First, the facts as we understand them, as we can see them with our own eyes. Video evidence from the scene shows that Preddy got between a woman who'd been pepper sprayed and a federal agent who was pepper spraying her. Preddy is then pepper sprayed himself. He continues to try to protect her, but he's tackled and restrained before ICE agents open fire on him again and again and again and again and again. Not a single shred of video evidence shows him drawing his gun, which he had a legal permit to carry legally. Now, in the face of those facts that you just saw with your own eyes, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem called Preddy a, quote, domestic terrorist. She and the officials who work for an administration that pardoned violent and armed insurrectionists who assaulted police officers at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, they are now today, without any sense of irony or shame, claiming that by virtue of having a gun, Preddy had a gun, which he never brandished at any point in the interaction with ICE agents, that somehow ICE shooting him over and over again was justifiable.
This individual showed up to impede a law enforcement operation and assaulted our officers. They responded according to their training and took action to defend the officer's life and those of the public around him. And I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at the scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple.
I am sorry that this gentleman is dead, but he did bring a 9mm semi-automatic weapon with 2 cartridges to what was supposed to be a peaceful protest. I've been to a protest. Yeah. Guess what? I didn't bring a gun. I brought a billboard.
A, I actually don't believe that. But B, quote, I don't know of any protester who shows up with a gun. We know they have the names of hundreds of them because they pardoned them. All of this flies in the face of the facts as we can see them with our own eyes and the law as we understand it. Our colleague Carol Lenig is reporting this, quote, multiple seasoned law enforcement officers told MS Now that they have been unable to see the justification for the shooting. Here's Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara.
This is an individual that was a city resident. It appears that he was present, exercising his First Amendment rights to record law enforcement activity, and also exercising his Second Amendment rights to lawfully be armed in a public space in the city. So I think very obviously there are serious questions that are being raised. I have seen different experts and people analyzing the video that have made statements about that. I cannot speculate, but I don't have any evidence that I've seen that suggests that the weapon was brandished.
In a statement, the parents of Alex Preddy say this, quote, we are heartbroken, but also very angry. Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and friends, and also the American veterans whom he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. The sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Please get the truth out about our son. He was a good man. Thank you. That plea from a grieving mom and dad to, quote, please get the truth out about our son is part of what is fueling a fact-finding mission and, frankly, a backlash. It's taking many shapes and forms right now. On the legal front, the state of Minnesota has gone to court to seek an order ending ICE's deployment in the city of Minneapolis, a judge sharply questioning lawyers for the Justice Department. She asked whether a letter from Attorney General Pam Bondi demanding an end to sanctuary policies and for the state to hand over the voter rolls in exchange for an end to ICE operations was a form of coercion. A ruling on that could come down at any point. The pushback to the Trump administration intent on spreading lies and disinformation in the wake of another deadly shooting by ICE agents is where we begin today with senior contributing editor and Minneapolis native Michelle Norris, and our reporter Alex Tabbitt is back on the ground for us in Minneapolis. Alex, I feel like the roller coaster and the whiplash that you and I and our viewers have been on from when we were together over 2 hours on Friday for that incredible protest, and then this news Saturday. Just before you get into your reporting today, take me back to the moment when you found out about the shooting.
Just like how our team found out about the shooting of Renee Good 17 days prior to the shooting and killing of Alex Preddy, we found out via an ICE observer, somebody who's dedicated their lives, their free time to hold these officers accountable. So we rushed to the scene, but we weren't the only ones who rushed to the scene, Nicole. Thousands of members of this community found out that yet another person was shot and killed by a federal officer here in Minneapolis. And instead of staying home and learning about what was going on their television or scrolling on their phones and anxiously, they got into their cars and they came towards the danger to hold these federal officers accountable and to be there for their community. One man named Greg Ketter, 70 years old, said he couldn't stay home. And I want you to watch his moment of catharsis.
No! You! Stop! Look out! Damn! Just kill. Okay. I'm fine. I didn't breathe anything. I'm just angry. I'm 70 years old. Angry.
We just caught up with Greg, and we asked him to contextualize this moment that his city, that his community is going through in the grander context of his life. I want you to hear what he had to say.
Well, it's a shameful period in American history. I saw a person after Renee Good was killed, a person who must have been about my age, and he was in tears too. And he just said, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of all of this. This is not my America. And that's the way I feel. It's just not what we're about, having our own police, or whatever you want to call them, come after us, or come after Americans. It's just not right. And come after immigrants. The immigrants are an integral part of our community.
You've got the federal government with a presence that just so greatly outsizes what the state and the city is able to defend its population from. Under those circumstances, where do you find this hope?
There are a lot more of us than there are of them. I mean, if they're going to start killing people randomly, then it's going to cause a lot of fear and panic, but a lot of people are going to step up. I just know they will. I mean, there's always the adage that, the right has the guns and the left has snowballs or whatever it's going to be, but I don't want to see a civil war. It's not going to be like the Civil War in the 1800s, because it's our neighbors, it's our our friends. We disagree. We should be able to disagree, but we should be able to disagree with I don't know, with some respect for each other. And there's just none of that left. Nobody seems to respect their neighbors anymore.
Slowly but surely, more American lives, forget America, human lives are being taken. What is happening in this country? Are there not other ways to deal with whatever our problems are regarding immigration in the country that uphold the fact that we're dealing with human beings?
Father John Uni delivering a powerful and relatable sermon yesterday at Boston's St. Cecilia Roman Catholic Church. Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia argues the ongoing violence in Minnesota comes at the cost of the nation's spirituality. Writing in part on social media, to see this kind of state violence is not only to witness the killing of a human being, but the spiraling spiritual death of a nation. And Senator Warnock joins us now. He also serves as a senior pastor of Atlanta's historic Ebenezer Baptist Church. Also with us, the host of Politics Nation on MS Now, Reverend Al Sharpton. He's the president of the National Action Network. And Senator, thank you for joining us this morning. Tell us what you told at your service, your community, about how to process what is happening and how to help spirituality flourish at a time like this.
Well, good to be with you this morning. I am deeply concerned about the soul of our country. I serve as pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Dr. King served, and I would remind your viewers that while Dr. King was focused on the issue of segregation as a matter of public policy, the mantra of his organization was to redeem the soul of America. And what we are witnessing right now is indicative of a deep spiritual crisis. And I say this to people of faith or people who claim no faith tradition at all. Listen, when we saw what happened on that tape with Mr. Alex Preddy, I thought about my own upbringing. But the moment they pushed that woman down on the streets, his fate was already sealed. Because if you were raised like I was raised, there's no way you're going to witness a woman being shoved violently onto the sidewalk and not try to defend her in some way. And so we witnessed his death execution style on video. But in real time, we're witnessing the spiraling spiritual death of our nation. We have to pray in this moment, not only with our lips, but with our legs, with our hands, and with our feet. And that's why I intend, as a United States Senator, to block funding for ICE this week. But this moment is about who we are as an American people, and we have to say no to Donald Trump, who is literally unleashing evil onto our streets.
And if I may, Reverend Al, I'll go to you next. I'd love for you to weigh in. We haven't heard from you yet about this on Morning Joe, but this is an immigration enforcement operation. And yet in a matter of weeks, 2 U.S. citizens are shot dead at point-blank range in the middle of a street. Some would say execution style, with the government rushing to judgment with no information, the judgment they make, the feds, not matching reality, not even close in both cases. Those are the 2 flashpoints of this immigration enforcement operations. U.S. citizens getting shot dead. And across the country, migrants, legal, documented human beings here, some waiting for their papers, some not legal, getting separated from their families, children traumatized, arrested even, their cars broken into and homes broken into, their rights violated, whether they're legal, illegal, committed a crime in the past or not. People on American soil have a right to due process, and ICE is breaking it every step of the way across America, not just in Minneapolis. So while those are flashpoints, and they are big ones, you have U.S. citizens getting shot dead In this last case, Alex Preddy, there were 9 shots. 9 shots after his gun was taken away. Who needs to be shot 9 times when you have 9 ICE agents around him? I have to also ask, how stupid and bumbling and completely unprepared for urban streets are these ICE agents when you look at the video? They clearly don't know what they're doing, and they are scared too, being put in a horrible position as this occupation force, as the governor of Minnesota would say, being put in the streets of Minneapolis, overrunning police, and being put in a position where the community absolutely hates what they're doing and fears them. So this cycle of fear and lack of experience leading to this 37-year-old ICU nurse who was clearly trying to help someone else, you can clearly see it in the video, getting, as many would argue, murdered by ICE. Reverend Dahl, I'll ask that you please give us your thoughts of how we're supposed to process all of this right now, and then you can take it to Senator and Pastor Warnock.
I think that we have to look at where we are in this country in terms of our values and our morals. If we can accept 2 unarmed people, U.S. citizens, that are standing up for people that have been recklessly, in some cases, accused, families divided, and act like that's all right, and these 2 people are killed for standing up for that, where is our moral standards? Where are we as a people? And that's why I think it's so important when you see spiritual and faith leaders like Bishop Betty, who I had on Politics Nation last night, or Bishop Matthew Haid here in New York, and others come to the forefront as faith leaders and say it's not a political issue, it's a moral issue. When we can be killed for standing up for our neighbor, practicing being the Good Samaritan. And I would ask you, Reverend Warnock, we have seen this out of the movement. You pastor Dr. King's church. I came out of the northern part of that movement. I grew up in SLC, Operation Breadbasket, under Bill Jones and Jesse Jackson. It was always central, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Where do we go with that, and how do we deal with it? I remember you always teased me the first time you were arrested was a demonstration I was leading against the shooting of Amadou Diallo, where you and some seminarians came and went to jail with us. How do we bring the moral argument into this as you and other senators hopefully stand up and say we're going to block ICE's money?
Well, let me reiterate again that I intend to block funding for ICE this week. I take seriously my role as a steward representing the people of Georgia and as a United States Senator. But, you know, in the spirit of that movement that you describe, I'm reminded of the story that Andy Young tells, that after they passed the Civil Rights Bill into law, they went to see President Johnson, and Dr. King didn't waste any time. He said, look, we need a voting rights law. And the president kept saying, we don't have the power to do that right now, Dr. King. And they left the meeting. The staff was feeling all demoralized and dejected. They said, what are we going to do? The president said he doesn't have the power. Dr. King said, well, we're going to have to go and find the president some power. That's what Selma was about. It was about agitation. It was about creative, nonviolent protest, which the Trump-Vance regime seems to want to make illegal in the United States of America. In other words, the people created the context for the change that they wanted to see. And so I'm inspired, even in this tragic moment, by ordinary citizens all across Minneapolis. These, in many respects, these are people who have not been activists, but they're looking out and they're seeing a 5-year-old being kidnapped by the government, clearly traumatized with his little hat on with flappy ears. They're seeing American citizens being shot and killed in cold blood. And they're saying enough is enough. And so Renee Good got in good trouble. Alex Preddy stood up in the best of the patriotic spirit and our humanity, and they paid an awesome price for that. We honor them by standing up in this moment. This cannot be unanswered.
Yeah, Simone, I think the White House would be wise to keep Donald Trump at home and not send him on the road. Listen, I can tell you, running for governor of the state of Florida, not only because of the economic duress of voters, but now coming out of Minnesota, there is an odor around Donald Trump that cannot be washed off. This is now, I think we're going to enter a midterm where we were in 2006, Michael would remember, where Republican candidates didn't want Bush 43 coming into town. It's odd for us to think about that given Trump's hold on the Republican Party. So certainly within a Republican primary, his import still weighs heavily. But I can tell you right now, he is an anchor around the necks of Republicans in general election politics. It is why you are seeing special elections swing towards Democrats by so many points, even in states like Florida, where we really are not registering more Democrats. Voters are just so frustrated with the economy that's getting away from them. And now with this moment in Minnesota that is forged in people's hearts and minds, it has distilled for them the chaos that Donald Trump has wrought upon the country. And so, listen, as a candidate, as a Democratic candidate, sure, I hope Donald Trump gets out on the trail more, because his message is going to sink down ballot Republicans as he continues to escalate this.
You know, David, to that point, it already has begun to, at least weigh down a number of Republican candidates, particularly Mr. Medell in Minnesota, who gave up his gubernatorial run because of the actions of this administration's immigration enforcement police. And how that ripples out around the country matters, and how the public receives that matters. You gave a talk last night, I happened to catch a little bit of, that went viral, in which you talked about in this moment, we must choose the right side of history. Talking about Alex Preddy's death, talking about his memory not being, just a blessing, but a moment of change. And I think with respect for a lot of folks out there, buffeted by economic woes, buffeted by the horrific scenes on their television of their fellow Americans being killed by their government, buffeted by children being snatched up and taken off and used as bait to get their parents by ICE officials. The country seems poised for change. But how is it delivered? How does that delivery system work for them in states like yours in Florida or states like Minnesota? It's not just, we need to get rid of ICE, but then there are other aspects of this change that have to be made real for the American people.
Yeah, Michael, we are a nation that is broken tonight, not just because of Minnesota, right? We knew we were broken. We knew that we were afraid that Greenland was going to break out into World War III just 1 week ago. We've already seen the suspension of due process and constitutional rights. We've seen this enormous escalation of grift and graft and corruption. We're seeing Donald Trump respond to his worst impulses, and the people around him can't check him. And then what it leads to is this moment in Minnesota where an American citizen is disarmed and then shot 10 times and left lifeless, and his body lays there having been murdered. And this administration goes out and slanders him. And what it did is it distilled in the American people's minds this moment after 10 years of Donald Trump, the chaos that he has wrought. We know that the nation is crumbling around us, that we are mocked on the world stage, that we are no longer seen for our strength, but we are laughed at for our division and for our weakness. And I think what has emerged is a moment, a day in the legacy of Donald Trump, rivaled only by January 6th, where people of all political persuasions say, no, this cannot be the country we are. And so then the question for us, and my comments last night, were that we must choose the right side of history in this moment, regardless of party, because Minnesota matters, not just in Minnesota, but across the country. And Minnesota matters in down ballot races and the governor's race in Florida for this very specific reason, because what we are realizing as the nation has crumbled, as we witness Minnesota, is that this is the culmination of 10 years of irresponsible, weak, feckless, fearful Republican leaders enabling this president and allowing him to drive us into this moment of chaos. And so, yes, for me, it means in a race against Byron Donalds that, yes, Minnesota matters in a contest between David Jolly and Byron Donalds. And, oh, by the way, we also get to showcase the hypocrisy of a party that is not backing the Constitution. They're backing Donald Trump. They're not backing the Second Amendment. They're backing Donald Trump. They're not backing the blue. They're backing Donald Trump. And so for Republicans right now, this has taken the varnish off. It has revealed the frailty and the fragile framing of their entire coalition and their entire foundation. And the opportunity for us does not have to be to hit at all Republicans and ask them to litigate the last 10 years of their support. It's to ask them to think about the future and to be Democrats that embrace independents and Republicans in this moment, willing to choose the right side of history.
Well, I think the other thing that you in Florida sort of uniquely understand is that the economic speech is not separate from the immigration policy. They are very much tied. And I have been intrigued that as much as ag folks talk about the fact that their industry will be in decline without some of these immigrants, and just the fear factor of people not wanting to show up to work, not feeling safe showing up to work, the fact that you have the construction guys saying the same thing, the fact that that has not penetrated with Republicans remains confounding to me, David Jolly.
Yeah, you know what's fascinating, Alicia? Look, my entire political story is a story of change, right? I was a Republican member of Congress. I spent 5 years as an independent. Today, I'm a proud Florida Democrat, not a reluctant one, because I found my home because the values I've been trying to exercise are deeply rooted in the Democratic Party. The reason I talk about values, Alicia, is this. Everywhere I go, I talk about 3 values that are rooted in the Democratic Party, but bigger than our party. The economy should work for everyone. Government can improve people's lives through access to health care, investments in public education, safe communities, home ownership, retirement security. And the third value is simple. We should be a place where everyone's rights are protected and their dignity celebrated, regardless of the color of their skin, where they were born, who they love, or who they worship. Now, understand, if we were to put that test against Republicans, are they fighting for an economy that works, for a government that improves people's life, and where everybody is celebrated? They fail on every single one of those values, the values. Policies get easy. Once we build a coalition around values that, yes, are rooted in the Democratic Party, but are big enough to bring in independents and Republicans into a new coalition. Listen, Alicia, we end up seeing a political coalition that has not emerged in this country in decades. And for people who are most concerned about Donald Trump, it's the coalition that answers the calling of how we turn the corner from this president.
After months of protest, what happened when they killed Alex Preddy? There was a small d Democratic flex against which the Trump administration just crumbled. Republicans in the Minnesota state legislature, quote, "It's clear that Operation Metro Surge is causing more harm than good. It needs to end. We need to, quote, de-escalate. We need to, quote, pause targeted operations." Again, that's Minnesota Republicans in the legislature. A leading Republican candidate for governor in Minnesota drops out of the race for governor today. A surprise announcement. Quote, Republican Chris Madel made a stunning exit from the Minnesota governor's race today, saying he cannot support the National Republican Party's stated retribution on the citizens of our state, nor can I count myself a member of a party that would do so. The lead in the Star Tribune, quote, in a surprise video announcement, he said, United States citizens, particularly those of color, live in fear. U.S. citizens are carrying papers to prove their citizenship. That's wrong. Madel called ICE's Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota, quote, an unmitigated disaster, saying at the end of the day, quote, I have to look my daughters in the eye and tell them I believe I did what was right. And I'm doing that today. As he quit his race for governor as a Republican, saying he could not stand right now to run in Minnesota as a Republican. It's also Republicans in Congress. Quote, the events in Minneapolis are incredibly disturbing. The credibility of ICE and DHS are at stake. There must be a full joint federal and state investigation. We can trust the American people with the truth. Quote, a thorough investigation is necessary to get to the bottom of these incidents and to maintain Americans' confidence in our justice system. Republican governors, too. Quote, enough. It's not acceptable for American citizens to be killed by federal agents for exercising their God-given and constitutional rights to protest their government. At best, these federal immigration operations are a complete failure of coordination of acceptable public safety and law enforcement practices, training, and leadership. At worst, it's a deliberate federal intimidation and incitement of American citizens that's resulting in the murder of Americans. Another Republican governor, quote, what we're seeing on TV, it's causing deep concerns over federal tactics and accountability. Americans don't like what they're seeing right now. Another Republican governor, the Trump administration needs, quote, to recalibrate on what needs to be done. Recalibrate. The Democrats in Congress moving too. On the Senate side, even Democratic senators who have sided with Republicans in the past, who have voted to fund the Trump administration when other Democrats didn't want to do that, even those Democratic senators, basically all the so-called moderates, the conservative Democrats, they came out and said they will not vote to fund the Department of Homeland Security and ICE. And that is a vote that has to happen this week. Democrats saying they are not going to do it even if they have done it before. In the House, the number of members of Congress who are signing up to an effort there to impeach Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, that races up to well over, look at that, 140 co-sponsors. I was going to say over 100 now. It's now at 140 co-sponsors of the resolution to impeach Kristi Noem as Homeland Security Secretary. And last week, there were a handful of House Democrats who did vote to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Those handful of House Democrats who voted to fund the Department of Homeland Security last week have this week started apologizing for it. Democrat Tom Suozzi in New York, quote, I failed to view the Homeland Security funding vote as a referendum on the illegal and immoral conduct of ICE in Minneapolis. I hear the anger from many of my constituents, and I take responsibility for that. I have long been critical of ICE's unlawful behavior, and I must do a better job demonstrating that. Some Democrats changing their previous position to say now they will not vote to fund ICE, and some Democrats who already voted to fund ICE saying, oh, wow, that was wrong. I'm so sorry. I didn't get it. I'll do better. This is called political change. And even in the sinkhole of sniveling cowardice that has been America's business so-called leaders, even there, they're starting to ever so tentatively squeak that maybe, possibly, if nobody minds, they might want to express that they're mildly uncomfortable with what Trump and the Trump administration are doing. Chief executives of Target, Best Buy, General Mills, Cargill, Land O'Lakes, Hormel, U.S. Bancorp, the Mayo Clinic, 3M, and dozens of other large Minnesota employers issued a public letter Sunday calling for, quote, an immediate de-escalation in their state. And yes, that is too little. And yes, that is too late, but it is way more than they were willing to do before. So take it, bank it, and build on it. We even saw some of the old graybeards of U.S. politics rouse from their retirement pastimes and diversions to say something. President Barack Obama and President Bill Clinton each issuing pretty stirring statements condemning Trump's attack on Minneapolis and praising the strong, peaceful protests of the people there in response. And, you know, we are conditioned to be bored and underwhelmed by anything done in Congress. And honestly, by Congress, by candidates, by brand name politicians, by even state elected leaders, we are conditioned to expect that the actions of anyone in politics who is not currently the president are just, not very powerful actions. They're just not very important. But we are conditioned to believe that in a way that is not actually keeping faith with who we're supposed to be as a country. Because what we inherited from the founding fathers of this country is a democracy that was explicitly and purposefully designed to be decentralized and divided and responsive to the people. And when the people push in a concerted way, what we are seeing is that the country is working the way it's supposed to. The levers of power are moving. There is a political response, a small d democratic response. And yes, that means the president's poll numbers sink further into the bedrock, including on immigration, which he really at one point wanted to be his signature issue, and he is now running from. But the other forces of political gravity start to work on him as well. He may not want to be subject to democratic force, but he is. And in Congress and in state government and in party politics and in business, which to them all means money as well as power, you are seeing political shift happening. And that is because of the people. It starts with the people. It starts with the protests that we have seen. Principled, peaceful, relentless protest. It works. That is the source of this shift. Peaceful, powerful, relentless, principled protest works. It uses democratic means to save democracy. That is what made that is what has made all of this political shifting happen. That is what has forced the Trump administration to change course. That is what has forced Trump to back down. Principle, peaceful, relentless protest is the democratic means of saving a democracy, and that is the only way to win for the long term. So as they pull Gregory Bovino and federal agents out of Minneapolis tonight, be very clear on why this happened. If you were part of those protests, if you were part of the peaceful democratic advocacy to get ICE out of Minneapolis, tonight you are winning.
Positive vibes. Download it. You can say free. This system are really trafficking me. Brother man, we've been a try, we've been a fight every day, we've never surrendered. Them here with Christ, and them don't care if we die. You see them agenda, don't protect me lives. See man, them not faith in Christ, and them fail to guide them. They know the only we reside, only but why not beside, but our words is their problem. We've been a try, we've been a fight every day, never surrender. Them here with Christ, But them no care if we die. See them agenda. Lord protect me lives. See man them no faith in Christ. And devil take hide them. They know the holy we decide. Holy power no decide. The world is their problem.
Thank you.
Father God, only you can save me.
Oh, it's gonna blow. You are amazing. People love your song. This is not the first time this happens to me. Last time I played it, they was like, who is this? Like, you're awesome. You're gonna make it. You're a star. You are a star, okay? You're a star, okay?
Them hearing Christ, and them don't care if we die. We see them agenda. Lord protect me nice. See man them no friends in Christ. And devil take hide them. They know the bully we decide. Only power no decide. But the world is their problem. Father God, give your advice for me life and my kids. Only you can hear me Christ and you never deceive. We not perfect as human beings, we can be weakness. We always try to keep it clean and avoid the sickness. I true say many of them not real, but it's not the business. Fight is not the way to see it, man, we have it in less. So many you leave them on my yard, but them never come back. The family hope here, postcard, but them never get that. This is some plan we used to own, we come and sell it to them. The places that we used to farm them and the first wicked. Uncle Sam back them up, cause he make him profit. And every time we try to stand up, take a head, then we see. Grandma violence from we street, but we still a resist. Only a man of God and preach, try to still a persist. Hey, Father God, only you can save me. Hey, the system I really try to kill me. Hey, we been a try, we been a fight every day. We never surrender. Them hear we Christ, but them don't care if we die. We see them agenda. Lord protect me lives. The man them not afraid for Christ. And devil to guide them. They know the bully we reside. Only power no decide, but the wealth is their problem. Been a fight, been a fight every day. Never surrender. Them hear we Christ, but them don't care if we die. We see them agenda. Lord protect me lives. The man them not afraid for Christ. And devil to guide them. They know the bully we decide. Only power no decide, but the wealth is their problem.
He's awesome, guys. Go download his song. I think he's so cool. Okay?